Undercover boss orders pepperoni pizza at his chain, left stunned by chef's bold lie. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Jason Parker adjusted his baseball cap and wiped the sweat from his brow. For the past 8 hours, he had been scrubbing dishes, mopping floors, and pretending to be just another minimum-wage worker at Tony's Pizza Palace, his own restaurant chain. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, a multimillionaire CEO, elbow deep in greasy dishwater, all in the name of understanding his business from the ground up. "Hey, new guy!" called out Marcus, the shift supervisor. "You've been working hard today. Why don't you grab some dinner before you head out? Employee meals on the house." Jason nodded gratefully, though he could afford to buy the entire restaurant 10 times over. This was exactly the kind of authentic experience he'd been hoping for when he decided to go undercover. He'd read about other CEOs doing it, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of actually being treated like a regular employee. The kitchen was still bustling despite the late hour. Steam rose from the pizza ovens, and the familiar scent of melted cheese and tomato sauce filled the air. Jason had built his empire on that smell. It was the foundation of everything he'd worked for since opening his first location 15 years ago. "What'll it be?" asked Miguel, the head chef, not looking up from the dough he was kneading. Miguel was a stocky man in his 40s with calloused hands and tired eyes that spoke of long hours and dedication. Jason had briefly met him during his interview that morning, but this was his first real interaction with the man who essentially ran the kitchen. "Just a simple pepperoni pizza," Jason replied, settling onto a stool near the counter. "Nothing fancy." Miguel nodded and got to work. Jason watched with professional interest as the chef spread the sauce with practiced efficiency, sprinkled the cheese with the perfect distribution he trained all his staff to achieve, and arranged the pepperoni in the precise pattern outlined in the company manual. Everything looked exactly as it should. But then something unexpected happened. Miguel reached under the counter and pulled out a small glass bottle filled with what looked like a dark, oily substance. Without hesitation, he drizzled it over the pizza before sliding it into the oven. The movement was so quick and natural that Jason almost missed it. Almost. "What was that?" Jason asked, trying to keep his voice casual despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. "Trade secret." Miguel winked. "You'll taste the difference, trust me." Jason's heart began to race. In 15 years of running this business, he'd never seen that bottle before. Every ingredient, every supplier, every single item that went into his pizzas was carefully vetted and approved by corporate. He knew the recipe by heart. He'd created it himself. 20 minutes later, Miguel slid the steaming pizza across the counter. "There you go, my friend. The best pepperoni pizza you'll ever taste." Jason took his first bite, and his world shifted. The flavor was unlike anything he'd ever experienced at Tony's Pizza Palace. The cheese seemed richer, the sauce more complex, and there was an underlying taste that he couldn't quite identify. It was stronger, almost chemically altered, with a tang that made his tongue tingle in a way that wasn't entirely pleasant. "This is different," Jason said carefully, taking another bite to confirm what his taste buds were telling him. Miguel's eyes lit up with pride. "I told you! It's a secret ingredient I've been testing. Really enhances the flavor, doesn't it?" Jason forced himself to nod enthusiastically while his mind raced. Testing? What testing? Nothing could be tested in his kitchens without going through corporate approval, health department clearance, and a dozen other protocols he'd put in place specifically to protect both his customers and his business. "Where did you get this secret ingredient?" Jason asked, keeping his tone light and curious. "Local supplier," Miguel replied, wiping down the counter. "Been working with them for a few weeks now. I think this could be the next big thing for Tony's. You know, something to set us apart from the competition." Jason nodded again, but inside he was reeling. There was no local supplier that wasn't on his approved vendor list. Every single ingredient purchase had to go through corporate procurement. Miguel was either lying or operating completely outside company policy. Both scenarios were equally troubling. "Have you talked to management about this?" Jason pressed. Miguel laughed, a sound tinged with frustration. Management? They take forever to approve anything new. By the time they finish their paperwork and meetings, the competition has already moved on to the next innovation. Sometimes you have to take initiative, you know? Jason felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just about an unapproved ingredient anymore. This was about a fundamental breakdown in the systems he'd spent years building to ensure quality and safety. Miguel seemed like a dedicated employee, but he was operating in a way that could potentially destroy everything Jason had worked for. It really does taste unique, Jason said, forcing himself to finish the slice. I've never had anything quite like it. Exactly, Miguel beamed. That's what I'm talking about. This could revolutionize our pizza. Make Tony's the place everyone talks about. As Jason stood to leave, thanking Miguel for the meal, his mind was already formulating a plan. He needed to know exactly what was in that bottle, where it really came from, and how long this had been going on. The stakes were higher than Miguel could possibly imagine. Walking to his car, Jason pulled out his phone and made a mental note to return tomorrow. He'd order the same pizza, ask more questions, and start building a case for what was clearly a serious breach of protocol. The taste of that mysterious ingredient still lingered in his mouth, a reminder that sometimes the biggest threats to a business come from the people who think they're trying to help. As he drove home to his mansion in the hills, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that he'd stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple case of an overeager chef. The way Miguel had added that ingredient so naturally, so practiced, suggested this wasn't a recent experiment. How long had this been going on? How many customers had been served pizza with this unknown substance? Tomorrow, he would get answers. Tonight, he would worry about what those answers might reveal about the business he thought he knew so well. Jason barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he could taste that strange, chemical tang from Miguel's pizza. By morning, he made his decision. He was going back, and this time he'd dig deeper. He arrived at Tony's Pizza Palace just as the lunch rush was beginning. The restaurant was packed with office workers and families, all trusting that their food was safe and made according to the standards Jason had built his reputation on. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than ever. Back again? Marcus, the shift supervisor, greeted him with a smile. You're keen for a new guy. Just eager to learn, Jason replied, tying on his apron. Plus, that pizza last night was incredible. I was hoping to try it again. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Miguel's been experimenting again, hasn't he? That guy's always trying something new. The casual way Marcus said it made Jason's stomach drop. This wasn't a one-time thing. Miguel had been experimenting regularly, and the staff knew about it. How had corporate never heard about this? Jason worked through the morning shift, bussing tables and helping in the kitchen, all while keeping a careful eye on Miguel. The chef moved with confidence, completely comfortable in his domain. He joked with the other cooks, directed the prep work, and seemed to genuinely care about the quality of the food going out. When the lunch rush finally died down, Jason approached the counter again. The usual? Miguel asked with a knowing grin. Absolutely. That pepperoni pizza was the best I've ever had. Miguel's chest swelled with pride. I told you. Wait until you taste it today. I've been perfecting the formula. Jason watched even more carefully this time as Miguel prepared the pizza. Everything was standard procedure until that moment when he reached for the mysterious bottle. But today, Miguel did something different. He held up the bottle for Jason to see. This is the future of Tony's Pizza, Miguel declared, his eyes shining with excitement. I've been working with this local supplier for months now. They developed this incredible flavor enhancer that's completely natural and safe. Months? Jason's voice cracked slightly. How many months? About 4, maybe 5, Miguel said, drizzling the substance over the pizza with practiced ease. Started small, just testing it on a few pies here and there. But the customer response has been amazing. People keep coming back, asking what we did differently. Jason felt his blood pressure rising. 5 months of serving customers an unapproved ingredient? 5 months of potential liability that could destroy his entire chain? Tell me more about this supplier, Jason said, forcing enthusiasm into his voice. They sound innovative. Miguel leaned in conspiratorially. They're a small operation, very exclusive. They don't work with just anyone. But they understand that restaurants need to stay ahead of the competition. Corporate approval processes are so slow, you know? By the time they finish their paperwork, the opportunity is gone. So you haven't gone through corporate approval? Not yet, Miguel admitted, sliding the pizza into the oven. But I will, once I prove how successful this is. I've been keeping detailed records of customer reactions, sales increases on days when I use the ingredient, repeat customer rates. The data is incredible. Jason's mind reeled. Not only was Miguel using an unapproved ingredient, but he was treating his customers like unwitting test subjects. The legal implications alone could shut down the entire chain. That's very entrepreneurial of you, Jason managed. Exactly. That's what this business needs. Innovation. Risk-taking. The corporate guys, they're too scared to try anything new. But I believe in this product. My supplier explained the whole process to me. It's derived from natural sources, completely safe, and it enhances the umami flavor in ways that traditional ingredients can't. When the pizza arrived, Jason took his first bite with dread. The taste was even stronger today, more pronounced. Whatever Miguel was using, he was getting bolder with the quantities. The supplier must be doing well if they're working with you exclusively, Jason probed. Oh, they're not exclusive to me, Miguel laughed. But I'm one of their beta testers. They're planning to roll this out to major chains across the country. I just wanted to make sure Tony's was ahead of the curve. Jason nearly choked on his pizza. Major chains? Absolutely. This could be the next big thing in the food industry. And we'll be able to say we were first. Miguel's pride was palpable. I've been documenting everything. When I present this to corporate, they'll see the results speak for themselves. What kind of results? Miguel pulled out a worn notebook from his apron pocket. Customer satisfaction scores up 15% on days when I use the enhancer. Average order value increased by 12%. And look at this. He flipped through pages covered in his handwriting. Repeat customer visits up 23% in the last month alone. Jason stared at the notebook, realizing that Miguel genuinely believed he was helping the business. His intentions weren't malicious. They were misguided and dangerous, but not malicious. Have you shared this data with anyone else? Not yet. I want to make sure I have enough evidence before I go to management. You know how corporate types are. They need everything proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. Jason nodded, finishing his pizza despite his growing unease. Miguel's confidence was unshakable, his belief in this mysterious ingredient absolute. Tomorrow, Jason would need to start unraveling the truth about this supplier and this so-called natural enhancement. As he prepared to leave, Miguel called out, "Same time tomorrow? I might have another variation to try." Jason's smile felt like a mask. Wouldn't miss it. That evening, Jason sat in his home office, staring at his computer screen. The corporate database showed every approved supplier, every ingredient, every single item that was supposed to be used in his restaurants. There was no mysterious local supplier. No flavor enhancer. No natural umami booster. Whatever Miguel was using, it existed completely outside the system Jason had built. The next morning, Jason arrived early, determined to investigate further. He found Sarah, one of the prep cooks, setting up her station. "Hey Sarah," he said casually. "Miguel's been trying some interesting new ingredients lately. Have you noticed?" Sarah glanced around nervously before responding. "You mean the secret stuff?" "Yeah, we've all seen it. But Miguel says we're not supposed to talk about it." "Why not?" "He says corporate wouldn't understand. That they'd shut it down before giving it a fair chance." Sarah lowered her voice. "Honestly, it makes me a little uncomfortable. I've been cooking for 10 years, and I've never seen anything like what comes out of that bottle." Jason's pulse quickened. What do you mean? It's thick, almost black, and it smells wrong. Not like food. But Miguel swears it's safe, so... She shrugged, but Jason could see the doubt in her eyes. During his shift, Jason made it a point to talk to other kitchen staff. The pattern was always the same. They'd seen Miguel using the mysterious ingredient. They weren't entirely comfortable with it, but they trusted his judgment. More troubling was the wall of secrecy Miguel had built around it. He gets real defensive if you ask too many questions, whispered Danny, a line cook. Last week, I asked him what company makes it, and he practically bit my head off. Said it was proprietary information. Has anyone else tried to taste it? Jason asked. Are you kidding? Miguel guards that bottle like it's gold. He's the only one who touches it, and he always adds it himself. Never lets anyone else handle it. Jason felt a chill. This level of secrecy wasn't just unusual, it was suspicious. If the ingredient was as safe and wonderful as Miguel claimed, why the paranoia? When lunch service began, Jason positioned himself where he could watch Miguel work. The chef moved with his usual confidence, but Jason noticed something he'd missed before. Every time Miguel reached for the mysterious bottle, he looked around first, making sure no one was watching too closely. When he thought no one was looking, his expression changed. Less pride, more anxiety. Miguel, Jason called out during a brief lull. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. About the supplier. Are they local? I might know them. Miguel's hand froze over the bottle. Oh, they're very small. Boutique operation. You probably wouldn't know them. Try me. I've lived here my whole life. They're from the next county over. Very specialized. They don't really advertise. Jason nodded, but he was already planning his next move. After his shift, he would visit every food supplier in the next county over. If Miguel's supplier existed, Jason would find them. That evening, Jason drove to the nearby industrial district where most food suppliers operated. He visited 7 different companies, showing them a photo of the mysterious bottle he'd secretly taken with his phone. The responses were all the same: blank stares, shaking heads, and definitive answers that they'd never seen anything like it. At the 8th supplier, Jason struck gold in the worst possible way. Oh, that stuff, said Tom, the warehouse manager, frowning at the photo. Yeah, we had a guy come in asking about that a few months ago. Strange fellow. Said he needed something to enhance pizza flavor but didn't want to go through normal channels. What did you tell him? We told him we couldn't help. What he was describing sounded like he wanted some kind of chemical additive, not a food ingredient. We only deal in approved, regulated products. Tom shook his head. The guy seemed pretty desperate though. Kept saying he needed something that would work fast and wouldn't show up on standard ingredient lists. Jason's heart sank. Did he say where he was going to look instead? He mentioned something about finding a more flexible supplier. To be honest, the whole conversation made me uncomfortable. We reported it to our compliance department. Driving home, Jason's mind raced. Miguel hadn't found a legitimate supplier. He'd been turned away by legitimate suppliers for asking for something that sounded illegal or dangerous. So where had he gotten the ingredient? The next morning, Jason arrived at work with a new determination. He needed to find out exactly what Miguel was putting in those pizzas, and he needed to do it fast. During the morning prep, he watched Miguel even more carefully. The chef was becoming increasingly paranoid, looking over his shoulder constantly and keeping the bottle closer to him than ever. You seem tense today, Jason observed. Miguel's laugh was forced. Just focused on perfection, you know? This ingredient is very precise. Too much and it overpowers everything. Too little and you don't get the full effect. What happens if you use too much? Miguel's face went pale. Nothing serious. Just, the flavor becomes too intense. Not dangerous or anything. Just not optimal. But Jason caught the flicker of fear in Miguel's eyes. Whatever was in that bottle, Miguel wasn't as confident about its safety as he pretended to be. That afternoon, Jason made a decision that would change everything. He was going to find out exactly what Miguel was hiding, even if it meant risking everything he built. Jason spent the weekend doing something he never imagined he'd have to do as a restaurant owner, conducting a covert investigation into his own business. He contacted Dr. Emma Rodriguez, a food safety expert he'd worked with during the early days of his company, and arranged to meet her at a private lab. "I need you to analyze this," Jason said, handing her a small sample of the mysterious substance he'd managed to collect from the kitchen. "But I need complete confidentiality. No one can know about this." Dr. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Jason, what's going on? This looks like..." "Just test it. Please. And tell me everything you find." While waiting for the results, Jason decided to track down the supplier Miguel had claimed to be working with. He drove to the address Miguel had mentioned during one of their conversations, a small industrial complex in the next county. When he arrived, his worst fears were confirmed. The building was empty. Not just closed, completely abandoned. Weeds grew through cracks in the parking lot, and a "for lease" sign indicated the property had been vacant for over a year. Jason's hands shook as he called the leasing office. "That unit? It's been empty since March of last year," the agent told him. "We've had a few inquiries, but nothing serious. Why, are you interested?" Jason hung up without answering. Miguel had been lying about everything. There was no local supplier, no legitimate source for his mysterious ingredient. Whatever he was putting in those pizzas, he was getting it from somewhere else entirely. His phone buzzed. Dr. Rodriguez. "Jason, you need to get to my lab immediately. This is serious." 20 minutes later, Jason sat across from Dr. Rodriguez in her sterile laboratory, watching her face grow more concerned as she explained her findings. "This substance contains several compounds that are not approved for food use," she said, her voice grave. "Most concerning is the presence of sodium benzoate in concentrations far exceeding safe levels, combined with what appears to be an industrial preservative typically used in manufacturing, not food production." Jason felt the room spin. "Industrial preservative?" "Yes. And that's not the worst part. There are traces of a chemical compound called methylparaben, which is used in cosmetics and pharmaceuticals but has never been approved for food consumption. In the concentrations I found, it could cause severe allergic reactions, digestive issues, and potentially more serious health problems with prolonged exposure." "How serious?" Dr. Rodriguez pulled up a report on her computer. "The FDA has strict regulations about these compounds for a reason. Methylparaben has been linked to endocrine disruption and, in some cases, liver damage. The combination of chemicals in this sample could trigger anything from mild nausea to severe toxic reactions, depending on the individual and the amount consumed." Jason's mind flashed to all the customers who had eaten Miguel's enhanced pizzas over the past 5 months. Families with children. Elderly customers. People with compromised immune systems. His stomach lurched. "There's more," Dr. Rodriguez continued. "This appears to be an industrial-grade flavor enhancer, the kind used in processed foods during manufacturing. But it's been diluted with something else, something I can't identify without more extensive testing. How would someone get access to this? That's what worries me most. This isn't something you can buy at a regular supplier. Industrial food additives like this are heavily regulated and only sold to licensed manufacturers. Either someone is selling it illegally or..." She paused, her expression darkening. "Or what? Or it's been stolen, diverted, or obtained through some other illegal means. The fact that it's been mixed with unknown substances suggests whoever is selling it doesn't have proper knowledge of food safety protocols." Jason leaned back in his chair, the full weight of the situation crushing down on him. "Dr. Rodriguez, I need to know, if this got out, if the media found out that my restaurants had been serving this to customers." "Jason, this isn't just about media coverage. This is about criminal liability. If anyone gets sick from this, if it can be traced back to your restaurant, you're looking at potential lawsuits that could destroy your entire company. And that's assuming no one dies." The word "dies" hit Jason like a physical blow. He built his business on trust, on the promise that families could come to Tony's Pizza Palace and know they were getting safe, quality food. Now he was learning that for months, his customers had been consuming potentially toxic chemicals. "I need to know where this is coming from," Jason said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Be careful, Jason. Whoever is selling this is operating outside the law. They're not going to welcome questions." That evening, Jason sat in his car outside Tony's Pizza Palace, watching the dinner rush through the windows. He could see families laughing, couples sharing meals, children enjoying pizza parties. All of them trusting that what they were eating was safe. His phone rang. It was Marcus. "Hey Jason, new guy. Sorry to bother you, but Miguel asked me to call. He wants to know if you're coming in tomorrow. He's got a new batch of that special ingredient to try." Jason closed his eyes, feeling sick. "Tell him I'll be there." "Great! He's really excited about this new formula. Says it's the best one yet." As Jason hung up, he realized that tomorrow would be the day he'd have to confront Miguel. But first, he needed to prepare for what might be the most important conversation of his career, one that could save his business or destroy it completely. The stakes had never been higher, and Jason was no longer sure he was ready for what he might discover. Jason arrived at Tony's Pizza Palace the next morning with Dr. Rodriguez's lab report folded in his back pocket and a weight in his chest that felt like it might crush him. He'd spent the entire night rehearsing what he would say to Miguel, how he would handle the confrontation that could determine the fate of his entire business empire. The lunch rush was particularly busy, and Jason forced himself to work normally, bussing tables and helping in the kitchen while watching Miguel closely. The chef seemed more animated than usual, almost giddy with excitement about his latest breakthrough. "Today's the day," Miguel whispered to him during a brief lull. "I've perfected the formula. This batch is incredible, stronger flavor, better consistency. You're going to love it." Jason's stomach turned. Stronger meant more of those dangerous chemicals Dr. Rodriguez had identified. More risk to every customer who would eat Miguel's poisoned pizza. When the restaurant finally emptied out around 3 p.m., Jason made his move. He approached Miguel, who was already preparing the familiar pepperoni pizza with obvious pride. "Miguel, we need to talk." Sure, Miguel said, reaching for the mysterious bottle. "But first, you have to try this. I've been working on it all weekend. The flavor profile is..." "Stop." Jason's voice was sharp enough to cut through Miguel's enthusiasm. "Don't add anything to that pizza. We need to talk about what you've been putting in the food." Miguel's hand froze halfway to the bottle. "What do you mean?" Jason pulled out his phone and showed Miguel the photo he'd taken of the empty building. "I went to visit your supplier, Miguel. There's nothing there. Just an abandoned warehouse that's been empty for over a year." The color drained from Miguel's face. I don't know what you're talking about. And I had that substance analyzed by a food safety expert." Jason pulled out the lab report. "Do you know what methylparaben is, Miguel? Do you know what sodium benzoate in high concentrations can do to people?" Miguel's hands began to shake. "Who are you?" "I'm Jason Parker. I own this restaurant. I own this entire chain. And for the past 5 months, you've been poisoning my customers." The bottle slipped from Miguel's hands, shattering on the floor. The dark substance spread across the tiles like an oil spill, and the acrid smell that rose from it made Jason's eyes water. "Mr. Parker? But you're just a dishwasher. You can't be. I'm the CEO of Tony's Pizza Palace, and I've been working undercover to understand my business better. What I found instead was that one of my employees has been conducting illegal food experiments on paying customers." Miguel sank onto a stool, his face buried in his hands. Oh God, what have I done?" "That's what I need you to tell me, Miguel. What exactly have you done?" For a long moment, Miguel said nothing. Then, slowly, he began to speak. "It started 6 months ago. Sales were down, and I kept hearing corporate talking about cost-cutting measures. I was afraid they were going to lay people off, Maybe even close this location. His voice was barely above a whisper. I just wanted to help. I wanted to make the food better, more memorable, so people would keep coming back. So you decided to experiment with industrial chemicals? I didn't know they were industrial chemicals. Miguel looked up, his eyes red with tears. I met this guy at a food service trade show. He said he had access to flavor enhancers that could revolutionize pizza. Said they were all natural, completely safe, but too new to be approved by the FDA yet. Jason felt a surge of anger. So you decided to test them on our customers? He showed me certificates, testimonials from other restaurants. He said it was being used successfully all over the country, just quietly, until the approval process caught up. Miguel's voice cracked. I thought I was being innovative. I thought I was saving the restaurant. What was this person's name? Rodriguez. Tony Rodriguez. He said he was a food scientist who had developed this breakthrough formula. Miguel laughed bitterly. He seemed so legitimate. Professional. He even gave me a business card. Where did you meet him for the transactions? Different places. Parking lots, usually. He said he had to be careful because his competitors were trying to steal his formula. Miguel wiped his eyes. I paid him in cash. $300 every 2 weeks for a new bottle. Jason's mind reeled. Miguel had been paying for poison, believing he was buying innovation. Miguel, people could have died. People could still die from what you've been serving them. I know. Miguel's voice was barely audible. I know that now. But I swear, Mr. Parker, I thought I was helping. I thought I was making the restaurant better. The customers seemed to love it. They kept coming back. Jason looked at the man who had nearly destroyed everything he'd built, and despite his anger, he felt a flicker of sympathy. Miguel's intentions had been good, but his methods had been catastrophically wrong. Miguel, I have to ask you to leave. Today. And I have to report this to the authorities. Miguel nodded, tears streaming down his face. I understand. I'm sorry, Mr. Parker. I'm so sorry. As Miguel gathered his things, Jason realized that this conversation was only the beginning. Now came the hardest part, figuring out how to fix the damage that had been done. The next 24 hours were the longest of Jason's life. He immediately called an emergency meeting with his legal team, his operations director, and Dr. Rodriguez. The conference room at corporate headquarters felt like a command center as they strategized damage control. We need to recall every pizza made in the last 5 months at that location, his lawyer, Patricia Chen, said grimly. And we need to contact every customer who might have been affected. That's impossible, replied David Kim, his operations director. We're talking about thousands of customers. We don't even have contact information for most of them. Jason rubbed his temples. What about health department notifications? Media statements? Any public announcement could destroy the entire chain, Patricia warned. But not making one could be worse if people start getting sick. Dr. Rodriguez spoke up. The good news is that the concentrations, while dangerous, probably won't cause immediate severe reactions in most healthy adults. The bad news is we have no way of knowing who might have underlying conditions that could make them more vulnerable. Jason made the hardest decision of his business career. We're going to do the right thing. Full disclosure, complete cooperation with health authorities, and we're going to take care of anyone who was affected. The next week was a nightmare of regulatory meetings, health department inspections, and legal consultations. Jason personally visited the restaurant to oversee the complete disposal of all food products and the deep cleaning of the entire kitchen. But there was one conversation he still needed to have. Miguel had left his home address in his employment file. Jason found himself standing outside a modest apartment complex on the other side of town, holding an envelope and fighting with his conscience. Miguel answered the door in his pajamas, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. Mr. Parker? I wasn't expecting you. Can we talk? They sat in Miguel's small living room, surrounded by family photos and cooking magazines. Jason could see a wife and 2 young children in the pictures, people who would be affected by Miguel's termination. "I've been thinking about what you said," Jason began. "About wanting to help the restaurant, about being afraid of layoffs." Miguel nodded miserably. "I've been thinking too. About all the people who ate my food. About what I could have done to them." He looked up at Jason. "Have you heard anything? About people getting sick?" "So far, no reports. We're monitoring the situation closely." Jason leaned forward. "Miguel, what you did was wrong. Dangerous. It could have destroyed everything I've built." "I know. But I also know that your intentions weren't malicious. You were trying to help, even if your methods were catastrophically misguided." Miguel's eyes filled with tears again. "It doesn't matter now. I've ruined everything. No restaurant will ever hire me again. My family." Jason pulled out the envelope. "That's not necessarily true." Miguel stared at the envelope suspiciously. "What is that?" "A letter of recommendation. And contact information for a friend of mine who owns a restaurant group in Phoenix. He's agreed to give you a probationary position in one of his kitchens." Miguel's mouth fell open. "I don't understand." "It comes with conditions. Strict supervision for the first year. Mandatory food safety training. And you'll start at an entry-level position, not as head chef." Jason's voice was firm. "But everyone deserves a second chance, especially someone who made a mistake while trying to do the right thing. Why would you do this for me?" Jason thought about the question for a long moment. "Because I learned something during this whole experience. The communication gap between corporate and kitchen staff is real. You felt like you couldn't wait for approval, couldn't trust the system to respond to innovation. That's partly on me. But what you did was wrong. But firing you and walking away doesn't solve the underlying problem." Jason stood up. "I'm implementing new policies across all locations. Monthly innovation meetings where kitchen staff can propose new ideas directly to corporate. A fast-track approval process for menu improvements. And better communication about company performance so employees don't feel like they're operating in the dark." Miguel wiped his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Parker. I don't deserve this kindness. Maybe not. But your family does. And my business will be better if good people like you stay in the industry, just with better guidance." 3 months later, Jason received a text from his friend in Phoenix. "Miguel's doing great. Following every protocol to the letter. Hasn't tried to innovate once without approval. Think you might have saved his career." Jason smiled, looking out at his flagship restaurant through his office window. The scandal had cost him significantly: legal fees, health department fines, and a temporary drop in customer confidence. But the new communication policies were working. Kitchen staff were more engaged, more willing to share concerns and ideas through proper channels. Sometimes the biggest threats to a business came from people trying to help in the wrong way. But sometimes, Jason had learned, the greatest opportunities for growth came from understanding why those people felt the need to take such desperate measures in the first place. The pizza business would never taste quite the same to him, but perhaps that wasn't entirely a bad thing.